Good morning, this is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for June 24th, 9 a.m. Here is the map from the front page of Hurricane City showing the current position of Tropical Storm Debby, and the system is drifting to the north, and the cone of air has shifted a little bit further to the north here to include the city of New Orleans and Lafayette, Baton Rouge, up in Louisiana, and even parts of Mississippi over here. Now, yesterday, the thinking was a little bit further south, like this. The cone was shaped something like this yesterday, and that was in response to the European model, which continued to take this due west almost towards Corpus Christi, Texas over here. But what's happened during the day is the European model has shifted, at least overnight anyway, and is coming more in line with the other models that have been displayed on the Hurricane City maps for the last 24 hours, and that's showing a more of a northerly component. Now the outlier here, we still have the HWRF here, that is the second best performing model, taking it in just south of Galveston, right around Matagorda, by the way, which is the 18th pick of my top 20 cities and islands to be affected during the season. But I think this is not going to be a Texas storm. The way the models are shifting to the right, I think this is going to be a Louisiana system, and people in Louisiana really need to pay attention. However, if you live along the coast, up here in Alabama, Mississippi, the Florida Panhandle, you're going to get some real heavy wind, rain and gusty winds up in here because there's a real strong band coming in. I'll show you that in just a minute. But we still have a squash spider out there. We've still got tracks taking it northeast over the Big Bend, Florida area and the Florida Panhandle, and then we got other tracks that are taking it still off to the west. So it's still a lot of uncertainty with the models continuing on this system. So everybody needs to pay attention all the way from Texas all the way over to even Tampa for very heavy rain and gusty winds. Now, while I have this frame up, let me go ahead and pull up the European animation. And actually, while I'm pulling that up, let me go ahead and get the full screen capture going here. Let me show you a couple things. First of all, in the HurTrack program, let's get our animation going on the HurTrack program and show you what's happening with that. We have the system forecast to move along the northern Gulf Coast. Well, let's start with the recon first of all. Here we go with the recon. The vortex message, latest vortex message, has this right around 27.8 and 86.48, but what they're finding is the winds are only about 38 knots, around 45 miles per hour, right near the center of circulation. But up here, these barbs to the north of the center, we have some surface winds right around 60 miles per hour just north of the center. So we have a really strong band. Again, I'm going to show you that in a minute, coming into the Florida Panhandle. So they might get some very strong gusty winds out of the east as this system comes in. And let's go ahead and take a look at the future animation using the HurTrack program here. And you can see that the system, the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center, has this skirting right along the northern Gulf Coast with some of the tropical storm force winds making it onshore on our current feature, Grand Isle, Louisiana. But notice the aqua circle, the sustained tropical storm force winds really stay offshore and do not come on into Grand Isle, although they'll have gusts of tropical storm force. That's why the countdown clock has not been activated at Hurricane City. And then the system is forecast to continue off to the west, heading maybe towards the Galveston or the maybe Port Arthur, Texas area. But again, I think this is going to shift a little more to the right because the European model has really shifted to the right to having it coming in right in central Louisiana. So I think we're going to see some shifts here in the forecast track over the next few hours. All right, let's get back to that shot of the Euro model. And here we are focused in on the Euro. And you can see that the latest run of the Euro has this now coming right in on central Louisiana and moving northwest into the state of Louisiana. And the Euro is a very good model. However, this time around, the model was a little bit left of the consensus models, and it has now come in to meet more with what the other models were thinking, which was either north or northeast. So interesting to see how this Euro has shifted a little bit. Usually the other models follow the Euro model, not the other way around. So keep an eye on those maps at Hurricane City, those model maps. Speaking of those maps, let's go ahead and show you the satellite view of satellite radar overlay of the maps at Hurricane City and show you the bands coming in here. And again, there's a real strong band heading into the Florida Panhandle, winds around 60 miles an hour, but notice the very broad circulation to this. The wind barbs on this map, again, you can zoom these maps right into the surface to get all the detailed information. And there's a real broad circulation out here, and this is fairly typical with these systems in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. They just have trouble gathering themselves, and there's usually wind shear and drier air off to the west of the system, which kind of chokes it off, does not allow it to wrap itself up. So the best case scenario for Louisiana would be that for this to just keep on drifting north, and then the bands come inland, and the majority of the heavy rain and high winds avoids the Louisiana and the New Orleans area and that area and comes into the Florida Panhandle. If it starts moving off to the west, though, and stays offshore, then it could get a little bit stronger here as it heads towards Louisiana or Texas. So it would be a weaker system if it just continues to head north or northeast. While I have this map up, I want to show you something interesting. When you use these maps, it gives you all the current advisories, watches, and warnings and everything. Click on this little red one right here. And we have an actual tornado warning for the Tampa area. And it says a tornado warning remains in effect till 9 a.m. Eastern time. Doppler radar indicated a potential tornado 13 miles north of Fort Myers, moving north at 25 miles an hour. So if you're in that area, pay close attention. But you're going to see these kinds of advisories popping all day. Here we go. We have a marine bulletin off Tampa as well, for very high winds from the south and some real strong gusty winds on the east side of this system. But look at the largeness of this system. It stretches all the way down toward the Florida Keys and South Florida. That's how large this system is. So larger systems take longer to consolidate and get stronger. Plus, in the eastern Gulf, you have the dry air coming in from the west. It's difficult for these systems to wrap up. So that's basically what we're dealing with. Okay, let's take a look at the a visible loop of Tropical Storm Debby, and let's go back to our image computer here and take a look at the rotation of this. And again, a very broad rotation here, but there's the circulation right in there, and the hurricane hunters are flying in there, and they're just having trouble finding any high winds right on the center. All the high winds are right up here near the northern Gulf Coast, approaching the Florida Panhandle. So right now, you're going to get probably the worst this thing has to offer, probably throughout the next 4 to 5 hours up there in the northern Gulf Coast, and then the lower winds are actually down near where the center is. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of our images. Again, I mentioned the recon was out there this afternoon, and they're going to be flying into the system again tonight around 8 o'clock, and we'll let you know what happens with that when they get in there if we have a stronger system. Now here's the upper level winds from the University of Wisconsin. Again, we have all this dry air. We have this upper level low out here in the western Gulf of Mexico, and that's kind of choking the system off. A little bit of southwest wind shear blowing the tops off. And then we have 30 knots of shear right on the backside of this system, so it's kind of in a lopsided environment. What you like to have when you have a tropical system developing is what's called vertical stacking. In other words, you have a high pressure system directly over the top of a system, kind of ventilating it, and the air circulates directly up and like a cylinder, kind of straight up and down. And what we have now is winds out of the southwest, kind of just blowing, knocking that cylinder off its track, and the system is just not able to vertically stack itself, and all the clouds are being blown off to the northeast of the center. So that's why we do not have a developing system, and it may never really get its act together if this kind of pattern continues. But the forecast from the Hurricane Center indicates conditions should become a little more favorable. But and here's another close-up of the situation in the Gulf of Mexico. Again, notice the broad circulation here, the wind barbs. Really not a real tight center on this, all the convection off to the east, but a big mass of rain over here that's going to be approaching the state of Florida over the next several hours. So everybody needs to pay close attention to their local advisories coming out on this system. Here's the rainfall forecast for the going out about 5 days on the system, the total amount of rain that we're expecting out of this. And we're talking rainfall amounts about 8 to 10 inches right along the immediate Florida Panhandle. And then even, lesser amounts over here up in Mississippi and Alabama. We're talking about 4 to 5 inches of rain. And then in southeast Louisiana, it increases slightly to about 10 inches. And that's if everything goes as forecast. And of course, the bullseye would be around 16 inches of rain out in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. But most of the rain, it looks like here, southeast Louisiana and the Florida Panhandle would get the most rain out of this if this forecast track verifies. Here are the intensity models from Weather Underground here, and you can see that the H-WRF is the only model that really takes this up to hurricane strength. The other models are keeping it right around strong tropical storm, 55, 60 mile per hour winds up in here. That's the SHIPS model, and the GFDL model really don't really ramp this up very much, and that's because it's not a vertically stacked system. And here's that radar right out of North Florida here, and look at all these bands coming in. And again, these are all moving off to the north, and they're going to be coming into, well, Panama City's already getting heavy rain. Fort Walton, Destin, Pensacola, Mobile, Alabama, you're all going to get under this real heavy rain. Apalachicola, all these areas are going to get blasted. And Panacea, Florida, over here, all these areas are going to get real heavy rain throughout the day, so just be prepared for that. All right, well, that's about it for now. Again, one more thing I wanted to show you at Hurricane City, and this is pretty cool. When you click on the current feature, which is Grand Isle, Louisiana, we have a new feature, which is the power outage button, and you can get the local power outages for the areas being impacted by Tropical Storm Debby. And right now we have multiple outages in and around New Orleans, but nothing major going on right now. So you can keep track of that by clicking on the current feature, which is Grand Isle, Louisiana. There's a real red target on the hurricane tracking map, but there's also a link right next to the tracking map. And you can get all the localized cams, radar, radio feeds, everything from the areas being affected. On another side note, there is right now no broadcast scheduled for a hurricane warning show. However, that may change if this ramps up into a hurricane and it maybe moves towards Texas or something. We'll have to see about that. But right now, there are no plans for a hurricane warning show. Well, that's it for now. Everybody in the Northern Gulf, be prepared for heavy rain and gusty winds. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.